YouTube Ozzico and the Goat House is back. And we got a load of good free agents still available somewhat deep within NFL free agency, which is kind of unusual here. So I wanted to go over these free agents, kind of got them in tiers here, kind of the top tier, best of the best. And we'll go over some more solid free agents and some veteran free agents that are probably due for one-year deals, some questions with them. And at the very end, maybe my favorite part, some real good sleeper free agents that I think will be better potentially on a new team, some upside there. So excited to go over this. Our Twitter has live news, thoughts, answering any questions for the most part. Everything on our Twitter, up to date. Kept keeping you up to date on NFL news there, so check it out. Link down below. Link down below for some recent videos, other important things. Like, subscribe, turn notifications on. We have all kinds of grades out very recently with the free agency signings and all these big-time trades, so check those out while you're at it. So on our Twitter, yeah, this was funny. So somebody tweeted at me. I was actually thinking of this video idea. Should I do it? Because there's a lot of good free agents left. It's something I don't normally do. And Tyler Thompson here, who follows us on Twitter, said had the idea as well. And I thought this was really funny because he said I'll be getting notifications during recording because this seems to always happens while I record the free agency signings and guys are getting signed as I'm doing it. So while I'm doing this one, I'm sure some of these free agents will be signed here. So I thought that was pretty funny. This is a good video idea here. So shout out to him. Yeah, a lot of updates here on our Twitter. Constantly there's things happening here in the NFL. So check us out. So we'll talk about the best of the best available free agents. You got to have Tyrann Mathieu at the top here. I mean, right there with a couple of the other ones right underneath him. But the strong safety from the Chiefs that also can play in the slot. Still sitting around in free agency, and the Chiefs and him, they were probably talking about some sort of contract, what his value is to them, what they'd be willing to pay, probably leading into free agency. And he had some tweets that kind of sounded like he was unhappy. The Chiefs didn't want to pay him a lot, and it might have been smart of the Chiefs because if you look at free agency, the other, a lot of teams short on cap, but well, now teams clearing some space, but how many teams need this type of safety? Even though he's very, very talented, not that many. So it's pretty smart to not overpay, and that would make sense why he's sitting around because there's not too many teams in need of this, so they're not going to go out and throw all the money at him while other teams really aren't doing it. So it kind of makes sense. I wanted to talk about landing spots for these guys, but that would have taken me a long time to get this video out. Half these guys probably would have got signed, but you think about the Eagles, but they're trying to save space for the draft because they got a load of first-round picks. It's an expensive draft class there. And they don't have too much space in the future, but the Eagles would make sense. The Steelers, maybe. We talked about the Steelers a little bit. There's not too many teams in need of a strong safety. People trying to get them back to the Houston Texans, but I don't think they're looking for the veteran guys here. Could he take a discount to play with the Saints? Coming from that area, obviously. That's obviously a big time playmaker that maybe doesn't fit everyone. Maybe everyone doesn't want to spend big money on him, but again, he makes those impact plays. So top guy available there. And Bobby Wagner, who was actually not scheduled to be a free agent, obviously the Seahawks released him. He's going to visit the Rams today. So this is one I thought could happen while I'm recording this video. We will see. Going to visit the Rams. I talked about this right when the news came out about him going to visit the Rams, what I think's happening here. I think he wanted a lot of money. I think because he's a big time linebacker. He was going to get paid a lot of money this year. He got cut, so that's pretty tough. I think he wanted a lot of money while he's sitting around. So now maybe he's at the point where it's like, if I'm not going to get that money that I want, I might as well go to one of the most appealing contenders. He's probably open to a few of those, but the Rams, who are fresh off a Super Bowl, could use a linebacker. It's probably a team you'd play for a little bit cheaper for. So if the Rams sign him to huge money, I'd kind of be surprised there. Because I don't know if they're really in the market to be spending a lot. We'll see. Stephon Gilmore, the Panthers corner, longtime Patriots corner, defensive player of the year just a couple years ago. Still sitting out there. I think it's the same situation. I think he was asking for, going into the free agency, we thought J.C. Jackson was going to get 18, 19, maybe 20 million. We thought Carlton Davis get like 17. Thought Gilmore would get, he's not as young as those guys, so maybe 16, 17. So he was probably going in asking for that. But then the top-tier cornerback market was a little lower, less money, obviously, than we expected. So I think his value goes down a bit. to where he wanted it to be. So that's kind of why he's sitting out there. We've heard of teams linked early on, but those teams kind of got the corners and maybe they're still interested. We heard teams like the Raiders, Jets early on, some other teams, but they got corners. Maybe if the market settles and he'll be willing to take a cheaper deal, then maybe. I think the Panthers would still maybe like him back. They got a lot of cap space. I heard the Chiefs could show interest. They're not going to spend a lot of money, though. They don't spend a lot of money at the cornerback position. They won't even spend money on their star receiver, Tyreek Hill. So we'll see. Price has to come down. That's a big time. I think these top three really separate themselves. There's a big three out there. Then you got J.C. Treader, who was released by the Browns, surprisingly. It's a very good center. 31 years old. It's really not old. You're talking about the offensive linemen there that kind of go deep into their 30s, surprisingly, the good ones. So there's not too many teams in need of a center. I'm mainly looking at the Dolphins, who are making big moves. And we need to clear a little bit more space. But the Dolphins, the Ravens could use a big-time center here. And there's a couple other teams, depending if they want to keep their current guy or try to find somebody better. Cowboys, Vikings, teams like that. I was thinking the Bears, but I think they're going to go Lucas Patrick at center. So we'll see. It's an interesting one. Odell Beckham Jr. probably be a top-tier guy. I mean, he's in the top-tier list here, but the top of the top three, like I said, in a group of their own. He would be if he wasn't injured. I still think the Rams really try to get him back. I still think so. If not, Packers, Chiefs, Saints, some of those teams that were kind of linked, he was linked to when he was available halfway through the season. So big-time receiver that can play in the slot or outside. Still pretty young, under 30 years old. And just coming off that injury, but he was big time for the Rams in the playoffs. And Jadeveon Clowney, who had a really good year, I'd be cautious with him. I'd be careful with him because don't want to overpay, don't want a super long-term deal because before this year, it's mainly struggling to stay healthy, but struggling to stay consistent. We know he has talent, but before, I thought a couple years ago that was a big pickup for the Titans, but mainly injured, pretty underwhelming. Just worked out opposite of Myles Garrett with the Browns. So it makes sense for him to go back with the Browns. The Browns are playing it very smart with him because they probably know that they value him more than anyone else, can drop the value, kind of letting him test a little bit. Then Dwayne Brown, yes, he is 36, going to be 37. That's the tough part. Has some injury concern, but a shortage on tackles, and you got a pretty solid left tackle here. Seattle Seahawks missed out on some guys, so maybe they get back involved with Dwayne Brown. The Panthers showed some interest. They have a lot of cap space. Those are, the two teams I'm mainly looking at. Maybe the Colts. We'll talk about Eric Fisher. Those are the few teams that I'm mainly looking at. Maybe the Steelers as well, if they're looking for an upgraded left tackle. Then we got Jarvis Landry, who had an off year last year. He wasn't too great, didn't have too much help from his quarterback, but the quarterback also didn't have too much help from his receivers. But he's still, 29 years old, solid receiver that can dominate the slot. More of a high-powered pass attack. He can kind of get back on track there. So I think Landry, there's a lot of teams in need of a receiver. We heard him already linked to, we heard him linked to the Falcons, the Packers, the Chiefs, back to the Browns even. There's several contending teams, perhaps, kind of what he's looking for maybe there. So we'll see. Talk about some other guys that are pretty solid. Marquez Valdes-Scantling's been getting some interest. Right when free agency opened, we heard a list of teams. I think we actually got the specific teams. It was a kind of a list of teams that were showing interest in MVS here, who's still pretty young. He's got that deep speed. You see the Packers, it kind of showed when they were missing him a little bit. So he's talented. And then now the Chiefs bringing him in for a visit. The Packers, now that they cleared space, they're showing even more interest. And we saw some other teams earlier in free agency that showed interest right away that needed a receiver. So that's a pretty big one here. Maybe he'll be signed soon. Melvin Gordon, we know he's a very talented running back. The thing with the downside with Melvin Gordon is it felt like he would fumble at the worst times, like red zone, big time moments. So that's something he's got to clean up. But in terms of running ability, seeing the hole, hitting the hole, make people miss, breaking tackles, pretty damn solid. Only 28 as well here for the solid back. Is he going to get picked up to start somewhere? Not too many teams need running backs. They don't want to pay a lot either. Darrell Williams, the Bills released him. He can play tackle or guard. The Bills kind of surprisingly moved him to guard. He had a really good year, not this past year, the year before, at right tackle, and he was about to be a free agent. Thought he was going to have a strong market. The Bills scooped him up, re-signed him before free agency started, and just like that, they moved him to guard and they released him. I like him better at right tackle. There's a shortage on good tackles. I think the team's going to get a solid one here. Maybe they'll play him at guard, but I like right tackle. Eric Fisher, the Colts had talks with him going into free agency. They broke apart. They didn't want to pay too much. It's a tricky one with Eric Fisher because he struggled a little bit last year. There's far, far worse starting tackles compared to Fisher. But remember, he was coming off that Achilles injury, kind of came back earlier than expected. So you wonder, so now we are more time separated from the Achilles injury. And we got this whole offseason still, too. So maybe, I don't really expect him to get fully back on track, right? But I think maybe he can get sort of back on track with this more time separated from that injury. Or maybe he's kind of like he was last year where it's maybe a little underwhelming compared to what he used to be. But again, teams desperate for tackles here. So we know the teams that need these tackles that they could be interested in. Maybe the Colts were probably smart. They didn't sign them beforehand. Let them test out, and then maybe the price comes down a little bit. Larry Ogunjobi, who was actually signed by the Bears, which was a shockingly expensive contract. He got $13.5 million per year. I was shocked by that because he kind of had one good year, really good year for the Bengals. That entire Bengals defensive line kind of all played better than expected. So you think, is it scheme? Is the players around him? So I'd be careful with that one, but very talented, had a very good year. I thought he was a top 100 player this year. And then failed his physical for the Bears after they signed him. So they moved on from him and didn't sign him, really. So I shouldn't say moved on from him. They just didn't sign him. So that's an interesting one. So I wonder what's going on with that. He's been sitting around, people worried about the injury or people, I think it's more so he got kind of a taste of that money. He got 13.5, which was shocking. That's almost like edge rusher money. And he's trying to get that. He's trying to get something close to that. And I don't think he's gonna get double digits per year. So I think that's more of the problem. Speaking of the Bears, their former defensive tackle Akeem Hicks, super talented. He's just kind of, he's 32, but mainly has that injury concern. He's due to miss some time, but when he's on the field, he's very, very talented. So he's still sitting out there. Jason Pierre-Paul, kind of up there in age. So it's kind of a theme here. Some of these guys still sitting around. They're up there in age. So still, maybe they want to get more money than they're actually getting right now, that they're getting offered. But Pierre-Paul, 33 years old. But, just look at 2 years ago, the Super Bowl year, he had a big-time year there. So you still think he's got some talent. And Joe Hayden, still performing well. Is performing well for the Steelers there with and we saw them kind of more towards mainly a man coverage team until last year, more zone. I thought he played fairly well as well. So you still see, he still got it. Any type of coverage concepts there. So Joe Hayden, it sounds like he'll be going elsewhere based on the way he's talking. 32 years old. Some teams need a corner. I feel like he's got to be picked up soon because I don't think he's one that's going to be asking an insane amount of money. So people probably get a bargain for him. Maybe Gilmore gets signed and it all starts to go down there. Some more guys. Bryce Callahan, another cornerback. He's experienced at slot and outside, 30 years old. He's very talented, has some injury concern, but I think holds some value because he's talented and he played both, inside and out there. Carlos Dunlap, who was released not too long ago by the Seattle Seahawks. He's up there in age, 33. He's pretty damn talented, though. Kind of a smart pass rusher. Not going to load up on a bunch of production, but better than what his production shows. And the same goes for Melvin Ingram. Going to align in different spots, kind of going to help create for his teammates there. Was pretty good down the stretch for the Chiefs when they picked him up. You'd like to think the Chiefs get him back, perhaps somewhat of a cheaper deal. A.J. Johnson from the Broncos, another Broncos guy, linebacker. He really took off a couple years ago. Pretty good in coverage, kind of a high motor guy, and then injured this past year. But you see the talents there. Patrick Peterson, the corner of the Vikings. I thought he had a very solid season for the Vikings. When he was out, when he had a hamstring injury, it showed. The Vikings really struggled at that position big time. I thought when he played pretty solid there. And Janoris Jenkins, could the Titans get him back a little cheaper perhaps? I was a little surprised. Well, kind of, because they needed a clear space. But their defense was so good, I felt like they were going to kind of try to keep the group together there. But a pretty solid season last year. The Billy Turner, I think, is a little bit on the underrated side. Very solid right tackle with experience. Again, teams need tackles, obviously pretty desperate. They're only 30 years old. And the Packers offensive line had kind of a brutal outing in that playoff game against the Niners, something that we're not used to seeing from the Packers offensive line, and it was mainly from that right tackle spot where Dennis Kelly had to fill in for Billy Turner. So, yeah, I think if they would have had him in that correct spot that game, I think maybe things would have went a little differently there. But I think he could be a starting right tackle. Will Fuller, yeah, what's the situation with him? We didn't really see him put Miami there. He didn't really play for Miami, but when he's healthy, when he's on the field, he's very, very talented, has that deep speed, good routes, only 27. So I guess what's the situation with him? Does he end up back playing with Deshaun Watson, who he played with for some time? And then some more solid guys. Cole Beasley was released by the Bills. We know he's a very solid slot receiver. Another Bills guy, Jerry Hughes. Guy that's kind of known. He was getting good pressure on quarterbacks, just couldn't get the quarterback down. Just couldn't actually sack him. The Bills it kind of been a theme for them. And they got Von Miller, a guy that gets the quarterback. But it's kind of been a theme with the pass rushers for the Bills. So is it even though they've been really good, the defense has been really good, is it kind of a Bills situation? So could he kind of finish better if he goes to a different team? Chris Harris Jr. has been a very solid corner that's played outside and inside for some time, maybe declining a little bit, like him better on the inside. Steven Nelson, solid outside corner, familiar with, pretty good with man coverage, cover two. Sheldon Richardson, who played with the Vikings last, I like his versatility. Wherever he's played, he's moved across the defensive line. Yeah, the Vikings kind of ran out of edge rushers last year, and he actually had to play there in a 4-3, so that was pretty impressive. I thought he was making some big-time impact plays down the stretch of the year, too, but he can play. Apparently he can play 4-3 end. We know he can play 3-4 end. He can play 3 technique, defensive tackle, over the guard. So I think a versatile, talented defensive lineman there. Joe Schobert was released by, and it says Cleveland there, but that's where he played. The graphics guy messed up there. Recently played with the Steelers. That's where he played his best ball, was with the Browns, and he was in the Jaguars actually. So the graphics guy going a few years back here, listing Cleveland next to Joe Schobert. But you get the idea. Very good with the Browns, struggle a little bit with the Jags and the Steelers. But yeah, I still think he's got some talent. Kind of get him back in the right scheme, 4-3 defense maybe. And then you have Landon Collins, who played for the Commanders, or Washington, obviously. He's kind of that, is he a strong safety, kind of that box safety. It's almost like he's a linebacker, So I think a team could be interested to bring him in. Ronnie Harrison, who played still very young, 24 years old, played fairly well for the Browns last year, sitting out there. And Matt Paradis, who I think is a solid center, good experience, 32 years old. I mean, that entire Panthers offensive line, pretty much besides Taylor Moton, struggled a bit. I think you kind of get him in a better unit. I think he's a pretty solid center. Again, we talked about the teams, and when we talked about J.C. Treader in need of a center, Dolphins, Ravens kind of leading the way there. And talking about some veteran guys that are probably due for a one-year deal. Gronk, a lot of these are big-name guys. I mean, they're bigger names than where their value is. I definitely think that. They're bigger names to where their actual value is. And Gronk's still very talented. I just really don't see him anywhere else besides the Bucs. And if he does go somewhere else, how much is he going to give you? I just see him with Tom Brady, so likely back there. Calais Campbell definitely declining, not much production last year. We know how talented and versatile he is across the defensive line, but yeah, I'd say it's probably a guy that's probably going to end up back with the Ravens on a cheap deal. Another Ravens guy, Brandon Williams, solid nose tackle there. We'll see if he ends up anywhere. They brought back Michael Pierce, who they used to use both, but you kind of get away with one or the other there. Fitzpatrick, so possible starting quarterback. He's not going to go into week 1 starting, but he can start. Obviously, he has that knowledge, has some good experience there. Is up there in age, 39, but quarterbacks, we see some guys playing at the high age. A.J. Green, who was kind of hot and cold last year, took some bashing from fans maybe. Not what he used to be, but solid receiver, 33 years old. Julio is a guy I'd be a little more careful with versus, some of these other guys, compared to A.J. Green, I guess we'll say, because, he just cannot stay healthy. He just can't do it. That was a big pickup for the Titans. They cut him, didn't really work out. So it's a guy I would really only, at this point, sign to a real cheap deal. T.Y. Hilton has some of that injury concern as well, but still kind of got that big playability. Antonio Brown, if it was me, I'd stay clear. I wouldn't sign Antonio Brown. So I don't know if he's trying to come back, if he's healthy, what's going on with the drama side of it. But talented, he's talented. We got to give him that. And then one more list of the veteran free agents, maybe due for a 1, maybe 2-year deal. And we'll talk about some sleepers. But Anthony Barr, who is definitely talented when he's on the field. He just had some injuries these last couple of years. But when he's played pretty damn well. Like him as a 4-3 outside linebacker. He's got to stay healthy. Then Dante Hightower, who's definitely declining there, was once one of the better inside linebackers in football. He's definitely declining, though, so we'll see where he ends up. It really sounds like the Patriots are ready to move on. They want some – there's a reason they're going with some younger guys. They want the younger guys there. Van Noy, who they cut, a little bit of a hybrid outside linebacker, could even rush off the edge, can drop in coverage. Declining, it feels like a little bit. Trey Flowers, who, here's 2 guys in a row, Flowers and Flowers, Trey and Eric Flowers, who I was a little surprised by their age. I was actually, usually I can kind of get in the range of when guessing guys' ages. It's hard to get exact for a lot of these guys, but I would have guessed, around 30, maybe in their 30s. But 2 guys that maybe they're a little bit sleeper veteran free agents because they're still a little young, but Flowers had some injury concerns, and he's kind of struggled outside of playing with the Patriots. Usually those guys end up back with the Patriots, so that's something to look out for there. Only 28, though. Just got to stay healthy. And then Eric Flowers, who's kind of been, the beginning of his career was almost known as a bust, a big-time letdown, and then he started kind of getting some things going a little bit, and then never really went back to that bust status, but it's kind of been hot and cold since then. But 27 years old, some pretty good experience. The more I'm thinking about it, the more I like him as just kind of a veteran free agent. Maybe he should be with the other list of guys there. So that's an interesting one that he's 27 years old. Kareem Jackson, who's a very solid, strong safety. Very instinctive, flies at the ball. He's kind of that guy where because they had Justin Simmons playing single high, and they had Kareem Jackson just do his thing, in the box, and doesn't do a whole lot in coverage. He's kind of fun to watch, though. The ability to read where the ball's going and go fly at the ball, make a play. Then Nate Solder, who has been very underwhelming the last several years, another guy that was pretty solid with the Patriots, up there in age 33. But the Giants, the offensive linemen for the most part haven't really worked out with the Giants. You've seen him play left and right, come off injury. So maybe he can be a little better somewhere else. We'll see. And Linval Joseph, who was once one of the better nose tackles in football, definitely declining a little bit, up there in age, has some injury concern, but a veteran to keep an eye out for. But probably my favorite part, besides maybe the big-time guy, Tyrann Mathieu, Bobby Wagner, Stephon Gilmore, I like these sleepers here. I like Kenny Young. I really like Kenny Young. The Rams kind of surprisingly traded him last year. I thought he played fairly well for the Rams. They knew they had to extend him. They didn't really want it. They wanted to get something for him. Goes to the Broncos, and we saw the Broncos because their linebackers got injured, and their run defense was all of a sudden going to, it was going bad. They get Kenny Young, kind of get him in the mix, and they were getting better and better and better. And I think other guys around him were also getting better. But I thought Kenny Young played very well down the stretch there. Only 27 years old. This is probably my favorite sleeper free agent here. Basically, the guys in this list, unless they get some surprising overpay, which I really don't think any of them are going to get. So unless that happens, I'm going to like whoever gets these guys because I think they're very, well, there's a mixture of they're solid or they got upside still, but I really like Kenny Young. Will Hernandez, who's been underwhelming, he's got to stay healthy as well, but he's been underwhelming as a guy that was hyped up so much out of UTEP and then just underwhelming, but, I think he was hyped for a reason. I wasn't one that was as hyped on him as others. There was some people even talking like first round back then. I never really understood that, but pretty solid prospect, obviously coming out. And you look at the Giants, especially on the interior, whoever they put in there just struggled. It was a mess. There was some bad coaching. I mean, they got some good coaching now, but some bad coaching, we think. There's some bad coaching over the last several years. And really and Andrew Thomas for them, who's a tackle, played well this year for them. Outside of that, there's been some struggle, especially on the interior. So if you get in, two things with offensive line. Your unit's got to be good. Guys could look worse if their unit is worse. Guys can look better if their unit's better, but coaching is a big thing in offensive line. So if you get Hernandez in there from a team that might be a guard away that has some pretty good coaching, I bet you, and if he stays healthy, I bet you he works out. I bet you he's good. So some upside there. A little different. Like Kenny Young, I think he's underrated. I think he's got some good play. Hernandez really doesn't have that good play, but I think he has that upside. And Derek Barnett, the Eagles were a team, last year they got pressure on the quarterback. They just couldn't sack the quarterback. So you kind of get Barnett, and he's a guy that gets pressure. Get him on a team that a little better coaching at the pass rush position. Team that finishes a little better. He's got some upside there. He's only 25 years old. Liked him as a prospect. Then Peppers got some good play under his belt too. A little inconsistent. Maybe kind of like another Landon Collins type. Is he a box guy? I think good flying around. Stop. Sniffing out the run, sideline to sideline. There's not too many teams in the market for this. That's kind of the problem. Then a couple running backs. Ronald Jones, who's visiting the Chiefs. I'd like him on the Chiefs. He's only 24 years old. Kind of got shelved a little bit behind Fournette. I think he's got some talent there, some upside. I'd like him with the Chiefs there. We'll see if they get him. Then Justin Jackson, who whenever he had to come in and play, pretty solid. He's racking up a good amount of yards. Obviously, the Chargers weren't a team that they weren't gonna pound the ball over and over again, but Jackson was racking up some good numbers there. So another running back to some upside. And Jayon Brown, just about staying healthy for him. I think he's been solid when he has been healthy, dropping in coverage, stopping a run, even blitzing in the past, his earlier years. Again, it's just when he's healthy, he's pretty damn solid. It's just can he stay healthy? And then maybe a step more into closer to the deep sleepers, not too deep, but Kamoko Toure, the edge rusher from the Colts, obviously, he was a pretty solid prospect coming out, a lot of upside, kind of a raw upside guy, and he's dealt with some injuries, but the Colts at the same time, they they haven't been able to develop some of these younger pass rushers. They've developed pretty well in the other positions, but these pass rushers, they can't really get them going. I kind of wondered if he was more of a 3-4 edge rusher as well. I do think he could fit the 4-3 like they've been playing, but get him to a team that develops a little better with the edge rushers, that would make some sense. So kind of got a mixture of guys that are just very underrated and young, or guys that are, I feel the upside still with the right team, the right coaching, the right unit, the right scheme. I feel some upside. So here's a list of guys that, it depends on the team probably, and it depends on the price. So I can't guarantee I like it, but most likely I'm gonna like whoever picks these guys up here. And and this is it for the video, but there are far more. There's a lot out there. There's more veteran guys. There's more deep sleeper guys. So we didn't talk about everyone here, but we kind of got to the main point here with this. There's teams with a lot of needs out there still, and there's teams that are clearing space still, and there's teams that are low on space that have not been able to do anything. They're kind of looking for these steals at this point. They're about to strike on a lot of these guys, load of free agents out there. So I'm excited. I'm sure some of these guys, I'm going to check right now. Did somebody get signed? Yes, Marquez Valdes-Scantling is signed with the Chiefs. He is on this video. We knew it would happen. 3-year, $30 million, $10 million per year. Somebody asked me how much money he's going to get per year yesterday. That's exactly what I said. So that makes sense. So this video is still going to go up. There's probably going to be some complainers that Valdes-Scantling already got signed. Like, what are you doing? It's going to happen, but it's all right. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it. We'll be talking more on Twitter, talking about this news here. And breaking that down. More free agency signing grades will be on the way, kind of letting them build up a little bit. Got quiet besides the trades for a little bit there. But subscribe to notifications on for all that content. We much appreciate it. Excited about the draft here. Follow our Twitter for the live updates. You guys know the drill. It's going to do it. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.